On January 20, 1943, a fighter plane entered Brussels, the capital of Belgium, undetected. It had been 3 years since the Belgians had surrendered to Germany and the Nazis were ruling the country harshly. However, their radars were unable to detect the aircraft, which flew low between the buildings, to go unnoticed. Its pilot was Lieutenant Jean de Sélys-Longchamps, who was in the service of the British Air Force. Jean's goal was to destroy a mysterious building in the heart of Brussels. His superiors had forbidden him from this mission numerous times, saying it was too dangerous, that it was crazy. But Jean was determined to do it and no one was going to get in his way. This was personal. He had been waiting for this moment for years. By attacking this building, Jean would finally avenge his father's death. The renegade pilot disobeyed his commanders, headed for Brussels and dropped until he was directly in front of his target, the Belvedere residence. He readied his cannons, took aim, and opened fire. But what was in this building and why did the pilot risk his life by disobeying the orders of his superiors? To understand the motives for revenge, we have to know his military career. Jean was born in Belgium in 1912 into a noble family, and his father was the powerful Baron Raymond de Sélys-Longchamps. Jean's family wanted him to be a banker, but when World War II started, he was drafted into the Belgian army as a cavalry officer. Belgium surrendered in May 1940, after a fierce campaign by the Third Reich. But surrender was not an option for Jean, which is why he participated in Operation Dunkirk, when hundreds of thousands of soldiers were evacuated from France and brought to safety in England. Jean managed to escape, and was determined to put up a fight. He returned to France, but with such bad luck that he arrived just as the country was surrendering to the Nazis. When Jean tried to leave France, he was captured by the Vichy government and put in a prisoner of war camp. Again Jean managed to outwit her enemies. He managed to escape from his prison and headed back to England, this time with the aim of joining the British Air Force to continue fighting from the air. But his plan had two drawbacks. The first was that he had no experience as a pilot, and, at 28, he was considered too old to fly a plane. To fix this, he forged his documents to pretend that he was younger and get admitted into the aeronautics, and then tirelessly trained until he became one of the best pilots of his time. Jean flew on dozens of infrastructure attack missions, and by 1942, everyone agreed that he was one of the bravest and toughest men in the Air Force. However, nobody knew that the pilot was burning with desire for revenge. While in England, one of his contacts in Belgium informed him that his father had been murdered by the Nazis. Baron Sélys-Longchamps had been arrested by the SIPO, Heinrich Himmler's brutal police force, who mercilessly tortured and executed him. The SIPO had installed its base of operations in a luxurious apartment building in the Belgian capital, the Belvedere residence, a place that earned a sinister reputation, as everyone knew that its cellars were used to torture prisoners. Once he recovered from the tragic news, Jean began to devise a plan for revenge. The objective was clear: he had to fly to the Belvedere residence and destroy it at all costs. Time and time again he asked his superiors to authorize an attack, but his request was always rejected, because the Air Force considered the risk too high and not worth it. Consequently, Jean waited for the perfect opportunity to act on his own. The moment of revenge came in January 1943, when he received orders to attack a railway crossing near Brussels. Jean headed there aboard her Hawker Typhoon, a fearsome and heavily armed fighter-bomber aircraft. He was carrying a bag full of little Belgian flags, which had been made especially by Belgian refugee children in England. He was accompanied by Sergeant André Blanco. Once the mission was accomplished, Jean ordered his partner to return to England while he continued to Brussels, disobeying the orders of his commanders. Finally, the time had come to avenge his father and defend the honor of his fatherland. He entered the capital by flying low between buildings, whereupon enemy radars failed to detect him. He headed towards Avenue Louise, one of the most prestigious streets in the Belgian capital, where his target was located. Jean was almost in front of the Nazi base and in a prime firing position. Nothing blocked his view and there was no risk of collateral damage. However, he did not attack immediately, instead passing through the Belvedere at high speed to attract the attention of Nazi officials. This maneuver was successful, and when the base residents went to the windows to see what was happening, Jean walked by a second time and fired. The 4 cannons of the plane unleashed a hail of fire on the Nazis, and the facade of the building was completely destroyed. Inside there were dead and wounded, and the streets were littered with broken glass and concrete. The attack was so precise that no other houses were damaged. The attack was a resounding success, but Jean was not finished. To further humiliate his enemies, he circled the city in victory. He then opened the cockpit of his plane and dropped the thousands of Belgian flags over the capital. After this, Jean finally flew back to England. The damage to the Belvedere residence was so extensive that it took 6 weeks for the building to return to function. According to the Nazis, there were a total of 4 dead and 5 seriously wounded, although the Belgian resistance claimed that the dead numbered more than 30. Among the fallen were important officers of the SS and the Gestapo. The attack served to raise the spirits of the population of Brussels, who had been oppressed by the Nazis for years. Back in England, Jean was hailed by his comrades, although his commanders were not happy with his disobedience. As punishment, he was stripped of his rank of lieutenant and transferred to another squad. However, his courage was recognized by the Air Force, which awarded him the Distinguished Flying Cross, and in his speech his superiors said, "This officer is a pilot of exceptional skill and talent, shows great fighting spirit and is always ready to destroy the enemy." In the months that followed, Jean continued to fight for England. His life, however, ended abruptly in August 1943, when he returned from a mission in Belgium. His plane had been badly damaged by German artillery and Jean died in a crash while trying to land. Today Belgium remembers him as a hero. On Avenue Louise, just in front of the Belvedere residence, there is a monument commemorating the renegade pilot who risked everything to save the honor of his country. Do you think Jean did the right thing by disobeying her superiors? Leave your answer in the comment box below and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn about many more military events that left their mark on history. Thank you very much for joining us until the end. And stay tuned for our next video.